the middle of the Italian capital, Rome. To this day, numerous legends and conspiracy theories surround this stronghold of the Catholic Church and its past. Today, we will take a closer look at the 12 darkest secrets of the Vatican and shed some light on the actual connections and backgrounds. But before we start, we would like to invite you to subscribe to our channel. Activate the notification bell so that you are guaranteed not to miss any new video, and give us a like at the end if you liked the post. 1. The Vatican was created during the war. Today, many believers and visitors to the Vatican assume that the state within the state is an institution that dates back thousands of years. But that's not true at all. The Vatican came into being as an independent state shortly before the outbreak of World War II. Officially, the Catholic Church wanted to ensure neutrality during the chaos of war. But in truth, the Vatican may have just exploited this situation to secure sovereignty and absolute diplomatic and secular immunity for the clergy. In plain language, this means that the Vatican nationals can do whatever they want. Within their state, they are safe, and no authority of any other country can get to the clergy. The Independence Treaty was signed in 1929 by Benito Mussolini, then head of the Italian government and later communist dictator. 2. Secret rooms and corridors. The Vatican covers an area of just over 100 hectares in the center of St. Peter's Basilica, with the circular piazza in front of it. Surrounding this center are palaces and gardens used as residences and administrative buildings by the Pope, his bishops, the bodyguard, and many other clergy. The buildings house the famous Art Museum, the secret Vatican Library, and the Vatican Bank. In total, just over 800 people live in the world's smallest state. According to unofficial information, there are secret passages in the Vatican, or under the Vatican, that connect the mini-state with the outside world. If someone wants to disappear from the Vatican or enter the state unseen, it should be possible at any time via these tunnels.
All roads lead to Rome.
3. The secret Vatican Library. The Vatican Library contains 20 kilometers of bulging bookshelves. The writings are said to go back to the time of Jesus and before. The library was officially established in the 12th century. After that, access to the books was strictly forbidden to ordinary mortals. It was not until 1881 that Pope Leo XIII allowed scholars access to the Vatican's secret archives. Although the Vatican claims the library is not so secret, to this day there are writings that only the Pope and his top bishops are allowed to see. Rumor has it that there are testimonies in the library about who Jesus really was, the existence of extraterrestrials, and the true nature of the world and human existence, and secret treaties of the Church with high-ranking rulers of all eras. On the British TV show 60 Minutes, one of the librarians commented on questions about the contents of the forbidden books by saying, "No one knows exactly what is in these books. It would be impossible for the human brain to understand."
Oh, yes we do.
4. The name of God. Within the Vatican Library, there is said to be a scripture that reflects the true name of God as revealed to Moses in the book of Exodus. In 463 AD, this name was kept in a secret place, and only reigning popes had access to it. Pope Francis had promised in 2017 to publish the true name of God as part of an opening up of the Church, but nothing has happened to date. The true name of God continues to remain a mystery.
No, it doesn't.
5. Exorcism in the Vatican. Father Gabriel Amorth is said to have performed 13,000 exorcisms of devils during his ministry. In the Vatican itself, there is an exorcism school, where 250 priests from all over the world learn the techniques of exorcism every year. Pope John Paul II and the recently deceased Pope Benedict XVI also personally performed exorcisms. 6. The secrets of the Vatican Bank. The Vatican has its own post office, TV and radio station, and bank. From 1971 to 1989, Archbishop Paul Casimir Marcinus was president of the bank. Before his career as God's banker, the U.S. citizen served as a bodyguard for Pope John Paul. During Marcinus's tenure, the Italian private bank, Ambrosiano Bank, collapsed, leaving a $1.4 billion debt streak. The former president of Ambrosiano Bank, Roberto Cavalli, was found hanged on Blackfriars Bridge in London in June 1982. The same day, Calvi's secretary fell from a window in Milan and died. Ambrosia's lawyer, Michele Sedona, died of cyanide poisoning in prison in March 1986. Whether the cases were murder or suicide could never be fully determined. In the course of the investigation, it turned out that the Vatican Bank was one of the main owners of the Ambrosiano Bank, and that the bank itself was a ghost bank of the mafia. Although Marcinus was proven to have committed numerous crimes, he exercised his diplomatic immunity and remained the head of the Vatican Bank for 7 more years. 7. The death of John Paul I. John Paul I had been in office for only 33 days when he was suddenly found dead in his bed on September 29, 1978, at the age of 65. Vatican doctors cited an acute heart attack as the official cause. There was no autopsy. According to witnesses, the very athletic Pope was in excellent health. To this day, there are indications that John Paul I had been taken out of the way by the mafia because he had announced reforms in the state.
MIB.
8. Machinations in the Second World War. In 2009, a document from 1942 was published that proved that the Vatican had stashed 200 million Swiss francs for the Nazis. The sum was said to be mostly confiscated assets of Jews who had fled or been murdered. Furthermore, there were indications that the Vatican gave shelter to numerous Nazis after the war and subsequently helped them to escape to South America. To date, the Vatican has not officially issued any statement on the allegations. 9. Sexual abuse and the Vatican's secret justice system. In 2008, a first wave of sexual abuse reports shook the Catholic Church. In 2019, the Vatican again faced a wave of allegations and reports. Church officials from around the world are affected. Priests, parish priests, and even bishops have exploited their positions and the trust of the faithful, sometimes for years or even decades, to commit sexual acts, mostly against children, and mostly against boys. Some of those affected had to face consequences. Others were covered up by the Church. The blame for these excesses is said to lie not only with celibacy, which does not allow priests to have sex, but above all with the strange sense of justice of Catholic leaders. Catholic priests have the right to forgive murders, rapes, mass murders, and even genocide as started by the Nazis. From the Church's point of view, this settles these crimes. In the Vatican, only 5 crimes are considered mortal sins. 1. Desecration of the Eucharist. 2. Murder or attempted murder of the Pope. 3. Priests who witness a crime committed by another priest and then hear that priest's confession. 4. Priests who have had sex and then hear their sexual partner's confession. 5. Participation in abortions. Publicity was first given to these strange internal laws of the Vatican and the Catholic Church in 2009. 10. Castrations for art. In the Sistine Chapel in the Vatican, a very special and today unthinkable choir was in use until the 20th century. The boys and later men who sang there were castrati. This meant that they had their testicles deliberately removed in the name of the Catholic Church. Only in this way did the boys' voices remain angelically high and pure. To give women these singing parts was absolutely unthinkable for the churchmen of the last millennium. According to unconfirmed information, dozens, if not hundreds of boys died during the castration, and the Vatican paid considerable sums to parents who agreed to the castration.
They were called concubines in the Bible. Concubine is a man who chose to have his testicles taken off so he could not get an erection and would go to heaven innocent of sleeping with a woman, because that's the trap. Once you have sex, that's why they double cherry on top. There are normal women you can have sex with, and then there's the other race. The other race has an odour about them. And nobody who's ever had sex, especially people who've had a lot of it, can say they've never come across somebody who has given off an odour that's just putrid. I think they call it the smell of sex. It's happened to me once. When they get you, and they will take your light. That's how they survive. And yeah, taste the rainbow. And look at the Skittles ads. Looks like the light's been tortured downstairs, doesn't it? They're sick. They're sick.
Inquisition. In 1252, Pope Innocent IV officially legitimized the use of torture to force suspects of heresy to confess. This was the beginning of the Inquisition, which cost the lives of at least 60,000 people in the following centuries. Women, healers, herbalists, and clairvoyants in particular were persecuted as witches. But also men, even children and animals were put on trial. The madness of the Inquisition could only last in Europe because generations of fanatical popes agreed to the goings-on. The last witch was burned in Germany in 1807 because she was blamed for a fire that almost destroyed a small town. The Vatican, however, did not fully repeal its witchcraft laws until 1965. In 2018, Pope Francis officially apologized to all victims of the Inquisition and their descendants.
What?
Galileo Galilei, one of the most prominent victims of the agitation, was officially rehabilitated in 1992. The Catholic Church had sentenced the astronomer to life imprisonment for discovering that it was not the sun that revolved around the Earth, but the Earth that revolved around the sun. At that time, this was considered an unimaginable sin and unforgivable blasphemy. 12th Papal Resignation. On February 28, 2013, Pope Benedict XVI declared the unbelievable. The man born Joseph Aloysius Ratzinger in Bavaria resigned from his office. This had happened only 5 times in more than 2,000 years. The first resigned pope was Benedict IX in 1047. He had fallen in love and married. Celestine V resigned his